Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, best place for long-term stock investors. Now today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This is going to be our mini podcast. We're going to be discussing a few things. So number one, we're going to be talking about China and why is it down so bad. We're also going to be discussing about what's happening to Meta. I mean, I believe it's down about 60% for the past 1 year. That's pretty shocking to know about these stats. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about stable income. And this is stable income as stable as it sounds? And how do you actually improve your active income? So stay tuned. As a disclaimer, none of what we say should be taken as financial advice. If you need that sort of advice, please seek to a professional. And we do not own any shares in Meta, Alibaba and Tencent.
Also, coming on November 3rd, we have a live training just for you if you're interested in learning how you should prepare yourself for 2023 as an investor. As you know, 2022 has been really difficult. We don't want you to continue feeling that pain going into the next year. So hop on to our training. If you're interested to join, you can click on the link in the comment section or the description.
Okay, MJ. So the Hang Seng Index has fallen about 35% in year to date. So what's happening, man? I mean, I've read the news that their GDP has actually improved like 3.9% for the third quarter as compared to last year. But the stock market is actually not doing well. So what's happening?
So I think with the stock market, there are several reasons. The first one is definitely the recent cabinet reshuffle by President Xi. So a lot of it is filled up with loyalists, and a lot of the international media, a big chunk of that will be the Western media, are not comfortable with that sort of arrangement because they think that President Xi might be not too favorable of market reforms. Now, context is that for most of China's history since around 1979, when Deng Xiaoping, which is the second president of the Chinese Communist Party, second leader, actually wanted to transform China's economy into from more communist type into some sort of mixed economy where, they call it today state capitalism. So it's just the government trying to push for market reforms. So it become more free market, more capitalism. You have companies, you have good people who can trade goods or services within China and outside China and things like that.
So is it, of course, from my understanding from China, they are more of a communist based kind of economy from the past. And then they are slowly opening up to the economy. They're trying to become more capitalist.
Well, actually, they have opened up. So, you had Deng Xiaoping. Then after that, you got Jiang Zemin. And then Hu Jintao, right? 2002 was like, you can say their big break where they got invited into the World Trade Organization. And so everything skyrocketed from there because then now they are in this trading bloc where a lot of trade restrictions are now lowered. So then suddenly, and of course, China, some of the cheapest manufacturing happens in China. Not only that, they can pretty much manufacture anything you want, from a Homer Simpson's pillow to these equipments that we are using today. So they got really big. But everything started to change a little bit, or at least people from the outside looking in says that President Xi feels that China has swung too much into capitalism, and then now it needs to go back to a bit more communism and more socialism. Right? That's the simple way of understanding.
Right.
And that's why he started using things like Xi Jinping taught, which is very, if you know the history, it's what Mao Zedong would do, right? You have a book based on Mao Zedong taught, right? And then so President Xi is also doing something similar. Not only that, President Xi is also coming up with or using what he calls common prosperity as a way to, grow the economy.
Correct.
So he wants to, make sure that all classes can get a big chunk of the pie as
Yeah.
well. So naturally, when you do things like that, what it really means, and again, it's nice sounding words, right? Common prosperity. But what it really means is that now the government will get way more involved in the different industries, whether it's real estate, whether it's the tech, as we've seen from Alibaba, before that, Tencent.
Yep.
They actually, they are in gaming, and then the Chinese government got involved and said, no, kids cannot game after like 10 p.m., something like that. And then with Alibaba, as we know, they blocked Ant Financial, things like that.
Correct.
So that's the first one. The second one, and of course, as President Xi fill up his cabinet with more, or his parliament, with more of loyalists, then he's less likely to change. And
Correct.
so when outside investors look at that, they say like, yeah, this is not good for companies because they're going to invest, and the Chinese government is still going to come in and try to put a ceiling on, let's say, the number of profit or revenue it can grow. That's not a good look. The second thing is also the zero COVID policy, which is not the best.
Right.
It damages supply chains. Consumers cannot spend, which means businesses cannot function as well.
Okay, so this is actually for my own personal question.
Yes.
How does it differ? Like, how does China's policy differ from the Russia? Like, is it like, are they, because they're going back to communism, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so is it something like Russia?
Yeah, so I assume you're referring to the USSR, right?
Correct.
The Soviet
Yes,
Union.
yes.
It's not likely, because here's the thing. What China is very aware is that they don't want to swing into extremes. So even though President Xi wants to get more involved in the economy and try to meddle more in these companies, it will not go back to the times of like the Soviet Union, where companies cannot make a profit, or it's very much controlled. Everything's controlled by the state. That's not what they want to do. But it does represent a trend change, lah. So they were moving in one direction, becoming more like the West, quote unquote, where it's a lot more free and things like that, market-wise. But now it's just a reversal of the trend. But the checkpoint, right, of a Soviet Union, I think that is not something that China themselves want, because they've seen how the free market, how free trade, capitalism and all that have allowed their own people, their own, political party, right, essentially, to become so rich, and that they can, in their cities, are the envy of many people, right, Shanghai, Beijing and all that. So I don't think they will go back to like Russia.
Like building their own empire, that kind of stuff.
I don't. They might want to build the empire, but they won't get rid of a lot of capitalism.
Okay, so just now you mentioned Alibaba and Tencent. So these two companies is pretty interesting, because I believe some of our viewers also are investors of these two companies. And if you look at Alibaba's, let's just say like maybe even 2 to 3 years time frame, it's actually dropped about 70%. From the peak about, I believe it's around $300 to now $60. And Charlie Munger is also heavily invested in this company. So when will we see the light at the end of this tunnel?
So you need to understand two separate things. Okay, so we tend to associate, for example, if the economy grows, then the stock market will grow.
Correct.
So, a lot of this is based on our experience in the US, right? We learn a lot about investing from the US, and that's largely true, right? In Malaysia, somewhat the same thing as well, but of course we have the element of politics, and the way our KLCI is set up is very different from like the S&P, so you can't really see much based on that. Unfortunately, in China's case, right, even if you look at whether it's the Hang Seng, the Shenzhen Index, the Shanghai Composite and all that, generally they don't, like, the economy can grow like 4 or 5 times, but the stock market can grow maybe only like 50-60% and or less. And the reason is because in order for a stock market to flourish at the same way that an economy will, what you need to do is that you need a lot of investor protection. That means you really need to care about investor, right? You have rights as an investor, you can vote, you can complain, things like that. That is very true in America, somewhat true in Malaysia, but in China, I don't think investors, especially foreign investors, are as protected. And the reason is because, rather the reason why foreign investors are important to look at is because a lot of people in China, a lot of their wealth is tied up to real estate, and they actually don't have like that much disposable income in the stock market. And they also, I think, they have an extreme in China, right? Either they love the stock market because there's a gambling element to it, or they really don't like it because it's absolutely volatile. Whereas Western investors see the stock market as a wealth building tool rather than a speculative tool. That's why if you look at like in the US, and to a small extent in Malaysia, they have this thing called 401k, which is their
a retirement fund,
yeah,
that kind of
something
thing.
like that. And it's linked to the stock market. So they've always saw the stock market as a wealth building tool, but not the Chinese. So like foreign investors need to come in and to have faith, but they have been selling a lot, right, over the past few months.
Right. Because I've noticed that both Alibaba and actually Tencent, right? If you look at Tencent, it's also like dropping like 44%. Both of their financials are actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
Like, but the only thing that is stopping them from growing their true market value is actually politics, right?
Yeah, mainly it's politics, and it's a lot of it is expectation. So I think a lot of investors are looking at the fundamentals of Tencent and Alibaba and all that. And it's growing, I assume free cash flow and all that is growing as well.
Yes.
Revenue, whatnot. Let's look at the free cash flow. Yeah, you can see, right, it's generally growing. But I think investors need to also realize that how secure are these profits?
Yep.
And investors generally, I would say, are more okay with things like business competition or threats to the profits, right? Competition or whatever. But the one thing that a lot of investors don't like, especially those in the West, regulatory. Because with a business condition, let's say, deteriorate, in a way, as a company, you have the ability to control it, right? So if more competition come in, then maybe you produce a better product. If the entire, let's say if you are linked to, commodities, well, then you control your costs, or you try to, hedge contracts, whatever lah. So those are more within the control. And so as an investor, you can at least have some faith that the management can do that. But when something like regulation comes in, it's not something that, no matter how good the management is, they can't do it, right? And in China, they want to avoid a situation like the US, where the people who control the United States are the big corporations.
Correct.
They're the one providing election money. They are the one, the dominant lah.
The 2008 financial crisis, that one's the
classic, right?
Classic example. Yeah. Okay. So final thoughts on whether will this last for the next few years? Do you think that foreign investors will still continue to stay away from China?
I think yes, they will continue to stay away. Personally, I'm not heavily invested in China. For actually another reason. The reason is because I actually just watched a video by, I can't remember his name really, something macro already. And he came up, he researched this paper. He found this paper and made a video out of it that basically showed that, they compare, right, GDP growth versus electricity consumption. And then they create a graph and then make a differentiation between authoritarian economies and
totalitarian.
No, authoritarian and democracies.
Okay.
So what he found out was that so GDP, the way that it's being like calculated, right, is there'll be some sort of centralized platform. In the case of the US, is the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, and they will go to each industry and then collect data systematically, then calculate the number lah, right? Same with China. China will have their own way of doing it. So in the US, you can roughly trust it because the bureau actually operates independent of the government.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
or the state government, right?
Correct, yeah.
But in China, it's the same. Right? So in the US, media, bureau, and president, separate.
Correct, yeah.
Independent. In China, media and these departments are all under the government. So what happens is that, again, there's no guarantee, but what the Chinese or any authoritarian regime can do is to play with the numbers.
Right, correct.
Right? So, but one thing you cannot fake actually is electricity consumption. Right? So, and you can see this from satellite. You can roughly calculate.
Yep.
So what this guy did was he did that, and he noticed, right, the differences between electricity consumption growth and GDP growth is biggest when it's an authoritarian regime. Meaning to say that over-reporting is more prone in authoritarian regimes by a factor of 35%.
Wow.
So why does all this matter, right? Is because if you invest, you need to invest with with good data.
Correct. Yeah. It must be transparent, must be clean. You cannot, if you fake
Correct.
it, yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, the auditors will actually make sound, but in this case, if it's under in one system.
And it's not just GDP figures, right? Even one figure that I used a lot, the PMI, is also different, right? In like there's the main one which you can find, then there's the CAIXIN, the CAIXIN one. So the CAIXI one, if I'm not mistaken, is the more what do you call it? The more independent one. And then there's one like the Chinese official figures. Even that also got discrepancies.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is when these things are happening, it's going to be a lot harder to invest. And you need a generally open economy with independent institutions for people to trust. And that's why even if Chinese economy can grow, assuming the numbers are right, that doesn't mean the stock market will grow.
All right.
So honestly, what does this mean for you as an investor? I know a lot of people who are anti-China for the reasons I gave, but a lot of people are also pro-China because for them they see only when the waters are a bit blur, then that's when you get a lot of opportunities, right?
Yeah.
The Chinese word for was it risk? I think is there's opportunity.
Yeah, okay. So for you Chinese, right? It's called 危机.
Yes.
So there's when there's opportunity, there's also risk, and then when there's risk, there's also opportunity.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who are very, very pro-China. They say now it's absolutely cheap. This is the time to get in. But of course, these are the same people who said 2 years ago, and cheap just got cheaper. So you really have to think for yourself as an investor. Now, another follow-up question you might ask is, if you are going into the Chinese market, how will you go about it? And how I will go about it is to actually not focus on all these big names, I would say.
Right.
To focus on the smaller names. You probably have to diversify a little bit more because, volatility can be a lot higher, and also maybe disclosures and all that are a bit lower as well. So there's that risk.
And that's an interesting fact for those investors who don't know much about China and their policy. Okay, so in the next segment, we're going to be talking about Meta. So stay tuned.
Alright guys, if you didn't know, we have a one-on-one mentorship program where you can apply for, where we level up your stock investing based on tailor-made solutions. If you're interested, you need to apply. Not all of you all will get into an interview. It's only 20% of you all will do it, and even fewer will get to hop on the program. But if you're confident that you can qualify, you can click on the link and fill in your details in the comment section or the description.
All right, we're back. So now, the metaverse. Wow. Okay, so if you don't know already, the share price for the Meta platform actually tumbled 31% in just 1 month. Yeah, okay. So this is actually a pretty interesting company that we actually, some of our members in our SIB group actually did ask about, like what what do you think about Meta? And I was actually pretty not too keen about investing in Meta.
Sure.
Yeah. So for several reasons, I can give a very brief one. So number one is the emergence of TikTok. So there's a lot of competition for big data and also the consumption of using that particular app. So definitely TikTok is one of the emerging competitor for Meta. Number two is their average revenue per user is actually decreasing. It's flatline, but it's actually decreasing a bit. Yeah, so that is something I'm also pretty concerned about. How are they going to improve like advertisement, or maybe even help business owner to educate them on how to advertise better in the Meta platform. And the third point, if I'm not mistaken, is that they are spending heavily on the metaverse. Huge on R&D. Yeah, so they're spending billions.
34 to 39 billion.
Yeah, so cumulatively, from year to date, they actually disclosed that they spent about 9 billion.
Yeah.
So they actually...
And more is coming.
Yeah, correct. So, MJ, what do you think about the metaverse? I mean, we can, before we go into the financial, as a company as a whole, what do you think about it?
Okay, so one thing to note also is that you mentioned about TikTok just now. Actually, they are actually doing quite well in fending off TikTok competition. So they reported, right? I'll just read out, right? Reels, which continues to grow quickly across our apps, both in production and consumption. There are now more than 140 billion Reels plays across Facebook and Instagram each day. That's a 50% increase from 6 months ago.
Correct.
So if you analyze it, right, it's potentially 100%.
Right. But the Reels, do they like differentiate? Because Reels, you can also post TikTok videos, right?
Yeah.
Indirectly. They don't really like disclose what are the content inside the Reel, right? I mean, it would be interesting if they did like separate, like let's say how many of the IG Reels is actually coming from TikTok platform, how many is actually from the IG Reel itself.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is something that maybe we as an investor, we need to know.
Yeah.
Like, what is that data?
You mean like if they cross-share and all that?
Correct, cross-sharing.
Yeah, potentially. So the thing is, I think for Facebook, historically, they've managed to just acquire like companies, right? Whether it's Oculus, WhatsApp and all that. But what they need to do now with TikTok is to just match it. So I don't think you can outdo TikTok. But one advantage they have over TikTok is that they already actually have a revenue model, right? With what they call the family of apps.
Yes.
Where essentially, they can, rely on Facebook advertising and things like that. Yes, even though average revenue per user is dropping, it's still very free cash flow generative and very, very powerful. Now, that's where they are planning to go into the
metaverse, is it?
Metaverse and spending big, right? They are redirecting a lot of resources into the metaverse. Now, of course, what that will look like exactly, we still don't know. We'll see. However, the thing is, if they don't do that, where else can they go? There are already so many users on.
I mean, they even changed the name to Metaverse, so it's kind of like a big commitment already, like you put to the public. Yeah.
So for me, even though I'm not invested, what I will say is that a lot of the fundamentals are generally still there.
Correct.
It's just that Facebook as a stock has always been built as a growth stock, right? A lot of that is going away.
Yep.
And then now with them spending into capex, what that will do to the P&L is that depreciation is going to start becoming a bigger factor lah. And when that happens, earnings will be compressed.
So that is actually pretty true. So if you look at it's actually dropping 52% in the for the past 3 months. I mean, if you compare between 2021 and 2022.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that is the overall view if you actually read their quarterly's report. And another thing, so you mentioned falling report.
Yeah.
It's happening, of course, because they are spending, right now, they are actually spending a lot of money in R&D, essentially. Segment breakdown, if you look at it, We know that their family of apps revenue is actually pretty flatline.
Yeah.
It's not like really growing that tremendously. Yeah. But their reality labs revenue has been dropping. So that is actually a pretty fun fact for you guys if you don't know already. Even though they are heavily spending on money to actually grow it.
But I think that's where that's why it's an experiment.
Yes.
And that's why I'm staying away from Meta mostly because I don't know whether it will work out. See, I think Mark Zuckerberg is doing the right thing. But just because he does the right thing doesn't mean it's going to work out. I know it sounds a bit weird, but basically that's
it makes sense. It makes sense.
He has to move into something that is like exciting enough to be bigger than what he already has. And there's not very few things that can do that.
It's actually similar to the electric vehicle 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Elon Musk Tesla has been like around for the past like 10 to even 20 years already.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just that he has been experimenting how to make costs more efficient. Then finally, boom, profit. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing I want to share here as well is that, in terms of paid messaging and, what they call click to messaging ads, they have a 9 billion run rate. It's quite crazy. So just to read out, click to messaging ads, business run ads on Facebook and Instagram that start a thread on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp or Instagram Direct, so they can communicate with customers directly. So that's actually huge. Like it's actually growing really well. And then like for WhatsApp, right, or what they call click to WhatsApp, it's up like 80%. So where they can do better, they are already doing better. Reels, WhatsApp, things that they've never monetized as much in the past. But again, how do you move the needle, right? 28 billion, 1 quarter. You drag that out, that's 120 billion. What?
Actually, they have actually captured the whole world except for China. China population.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in fact, like if you look at it objectively, the reason why TikTok is probably better than Facebook. Yes, no doubt the algorithm is good. I just checked on my phone that day, right? 30% of my time on the phone is on TikTok. And it's number 1 now. No, it's not YouTube anymore. But YouTube is still about 30%, high 20s.
Yep.
Right? It's about the same. So, but they can rest on the China growth or the China revenues and sales all that. But if you take, and Facebook doesn't have that. In fact, Facebook, the government is attacking them.
Yep, that's very true.
But in China, the government protects them, right? With not allowing Facebook to get in, basically.
Yeah.
This is the same story for Alibaba with Amazon and all that. So there's nothing to take away from what the Chinese companies have done, which is fantastic. TikTok, Tencent, and all that. But you put yourself in Mark Zuckerberg's position, he's doing everything he can do, right? Reels, I think they make 2-3 billion a year. Fantastic. That is where it is. But guess what? 2-3 billion, how is it going to affect, a sales of 120 billion odd? You can't. And I can't remember how many users there are on Facebook really.
That's why I mentioned the whole world except for China.
Yeah.
It's actually going to be the whole world.
Yeah. So, and then of course, people can say like Africa, for example, a lot of them don't have internet access. And they might be a growth sector. Yeah, maybe, but that's a really, really long shot. So all the big markets, right? Whether it's, of course, North America, Europe, Asia ex-China, ASEAN, like Facebook's everywhere. Where can they grow? The only way is to do metaverse. But unfortunately, to do metaverse stuff, over the next 1 or 2 years, they're going to spend a lot.
Yes.
Right? And to...
it's still going to be like what you mentioned, experimental phase.
Yes.
I mean, as an investor, you cannot really expect like this business will turn profitable anytime soon, right? Because it's still like what I mentioned, it's still like the EV, very early EV phase. Like nobody knows the tech behind EV. Nobody knows how to make it more cost efficient and all the stuff. So what Mark Zuckerberg is doing right now is actually what is happening during the early EV phase. That's how I explain it.
Yeah. But if there is some good news, they reported, right? They do expect like CapEx to come down as a percentage of sales over time. Roughly, you're looking at after 2023, they do expect for this to start to wane or flatline at least, but they do expect right after 2023 for the results and all that to come in. So investing is never like black and white, super easy to figure out. At the end of the day, my personal policy when investing is I generally avoid the big names. I generally avoid them.
Yeah, I mean, because they're too well covered already, right?
They do well, no, that, and also because they generally hit their limit already.
Yeah,
right.
Correct. Yeah, they are in the cash cow position.
Yeah,
in the peak, in the maturity phase.
Meta, like today we talk about Meta is struggling out there, but we forget, right? They created an industry and then they dominated the industry, right? Now, the only name I would say that has the ability to be at a big, large cap segment but could grow even bigger, potentially Tesla. Because the industry itself is still quite young. And
I mean, we haven't even talked about the autonomous taxi drivers.
Yeah. There's so many things, lorry drivers, a lot of things, whatever.
Yeah.
But of course, the challenge with Tesla, unlike Facebook, is that Tesla can have a lot more competition. Now, the competition now is absolutely rubbish. But I think that recently Tesla announced, right, they are free cash flow generative really, finally.
Correct, yep.
Now, a lot of investors are cheering that for good reason, even though the stock is down like 40%. But of course, the market is always forward-looking. So this is what investors saw 1-2 years ago. However, where Tesla and Facebook differs is that although Tesla is really at a high, Meta is really a high, it's like dipping down a little bit, all that. Their dip down can be a lot slower simply because they are so dominant in where they are. Nobody's coming to eat their pie. Now, Tesla is in a growth phase and they are right on top, number one, as the growth phase, right? And they're growing, they grow at 50% a year, something like that. The challenge is that they may not be alone, whereas Meta is alone, right? So now, because now a lot of the companies, right, around the world looking at Tesla and say, hey, look, they are free cash flow generative really. Let's just copy.
Yeah.
This is I think one of the biggest risks. Yes, for sure the competition has been absolutely rubbish for Tesla. But anyway, that's a story for another day.
Right. So yeah, that's actually our thought on the metaverse. So I hope you guys get a lot of insight from our discussion. And in our final segment, we're going to be talking about a more general kind of topic. It is whether stable income is it really stable? And how do you actually improve your active income?
All right. If you're enjoying the video so far, remember to like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so that whenever new videos pop, you know it fresh.
Okay, guys. So if you want to improve your active income, or you definitely want to listen to this discussion right here. Okay, so the myth about active income, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure during your parents' generation, they always tell you to, back then, how they actually get like a stable job or how do they improve their income is actually first step, you have to study well. Get good grades. Then the second step is to get a stable job. I mean, anything that has to do with doctor, engineer, or lawyer, you're pretty set for life. Yeah. And then the third point that they say, once you get this job, you can make good money. So that is their way of thinking back then in the generation.
Yeah.
All right. But in reality, right now in 2022, we know that good grades don't actually really mean anything in the real world. Yeah. I mean, for some industry. Yeah. So I mean, except for I would say the medicine, certain engineering or software engineering, that one is still fine. But if you want to talk about business, if you want to talk about accounts, I mean, generally, even though if you score well, right, it doesn't really necessarily land you a job. Yeah. And actually, the reason why we should choose to go to college or even universities, right? Actually, the main reason is not to get good grades. I would say. I mean, personally, I actually, this is something that I realized. Because back then in uni, right, I was actually very studious.
Yeah.
And all of my friends, right, they were busy building relationship and networking. I mean, how I see is relationship and networking is that they always hang out, and then after university they are still very close. I mean, they still talk. Yeah, but back then I was like, focus on the study, get good grades, and then I was like, I kept on avoiding like parties that my
well, you're
friends
very good
organized.
because I didn't even do both. I didn't even study. Didn't really network.
Yeah, but that's the thing about university and college. It's actually a good time for you to build relationship, learn how to build relationship, and learn how to
But you
network.
see, I mean, that's the challenge, right? Because if you spend time doing all that, then if you don't get the grades, how are you going to?
Yeah, get the scholarship and all the stuff like
And I don't blame also because you see, for someone typically, I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, all the friends, right, that network, build relationship and all that, do they come from generally wealthier backgrounds?
Actually it's quite mixed. It's quite mixed, yeah.
Okay, because from my experience, right, I realized if you, let's say, come from a very poor, I would say, background, it's harder for you because you're always torn, right? Because you need some to guarantee your future a bit more. Whereas someone who is wealthier or whatever, they can choose to not do so well, and it doesn't matter. They're just gonna have connections and they're gonna have parents' money or whatever. So that's why I brought it up, lah.
Right. Okay. That's a fair point also.
Yeah.
But actually, the reason why I mentioned networking, it's more of like, if let's say your friend is doing a startup or doing like something on its own, you can actually like ask, hey, do you need anything to help out?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the barrier to actually ask them or even like talk to them is much more easier if you don't build a relationship.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so you can see, I mean, there's two sides of a coin. One, you can get good grades and then find a job. Hopefully you land a job. And then, or another thing is that you just make friends around. And then from there, who knows, maybe opportunity arise if you know how to seize it. Yeah. Okay, so the third reality is that not all jobs are stable.
Yeah.
I mean, we can see like in 2021 or late 2021 and early 2022, there's a lot of layoffs, I mean, globally, right? I mean, you see like the Tesla, you even see like the metaverse, everybody is like firing here left and right. And that is actually have to do a lot with your skills and competency. Yeah, I think not many people realize that you need to always sharpen your skills. You need to always be competent so that you can stay relevant in the industry and stay as an asset to the company rather than a liability. So that is something you need to be aware of, is that if you land a job, doesn't mean that you'll still be working in the same company for the next 5 to even 10 years. Yeah, you will never know. The fourth point is that, again, not all jobs will pay you well. I mean, I've read news that doctors or even nurses or maybe even engineers are getting paid minimum wage or even less than that. So that is something you need to realize, like, at this era, it doesn't really have the same outcome as the previous generation. Yeah. So in order for you to be competent and to survive in this workforce, you definitely have to do a lot of things. You have to do a lot of soft skill sharpening and all of that. I think
here's how I can add on to your point, right? Becoming a professional like a doctor, lawyer, engineer is great when there aren't a lot of doctors, lawyers, and engineers.
Yes, correct.
Right. If I say I have a degree today, great. Like, to impress someone, I have to say something like degree in physics from Cambridge. Then I'll be like, oh, cool, okay. But even then, I'll be like, oh, okay. I've heard this before. During our parents' generation, if you say that I have a degree, they'll be like, wow, fantastic. Where do you go? Like, whoa. But during our grandparents' time, if you say you had a degree, right, like automatically, please marry my daughter. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And so, what does all this mean? Well, it's all about demand and supply, right? And this was one of the reasons why I didn't get a degree as well, is because I realized that it's actually very simple. You want to be in areas that are generally short in supply, right? If you go get a degree, first of all, it's a high supply kind of environment.
Oversupply lah, actually. Yeah. I mean, look at how many people are still underemployed. I mean, we know unemployment, right? I mean, it's still like 3 to 4%, but there's still a lot of employed people. Yeah. So that is.
Yeah. And so the question you asked today is what skill or what thing you can do that is low in supply. So I mean, we've all heard of things like software engineering. Yes. I don't know what else. Yeah, TikTok influencers. Yes, they are short, like they're rare. Things like that. OnlyFans creators. I mean, I read stats that they make like 1 million per month. I mean, that's crazy. They actually make more than the traditional adult industry, like if they were to do it. Then of course, like one of the reasons why we are in YouTube as well is because it's also a creative place. So one of the trends I can see moving forward is that the focus on specialization will reduce. It will never disappear. We always need specialists. But generally, especially during our parents' time, they'll say you make the most money when you're a specialist. I think that trend is going to be a lot dimmer, and a generalist would start to become more valuable. So what is a generalist? Generally speaking, is someone who is in a creative industry, usually one. What they are doing is they are taking different parts of the world and combining it together to produce something. So someone like Elon Musk is probably someone like that.
Yeah.
Right? Steve Jobs, right? He combined calligraphy with, art and how things look with electronics. I was just watching a TikTok 2 days ago, and he said that why Steve Jobs was really great is because since he was young, right, when he looked at electronics, he's not looking at what the electronics can do or what's the wiring inside or how to build it. That's how an engineer would think about it, which is great. Like, we need those. But he was obsessed about how it should look like visually from the outside, how it should look like. That's all he was obsessed about. And so that was when he was 5 years old. When he's 55, you look at Apple products, you can see his obsession on his products. Right? One button, slick, right? The apps, it's so nice. And you realize one thing, if you let the engineer design, let's say, right, the Apple product, right?
They'll try to say that it's impossible.
No. So like you look at the apps, right? So you look at the app, right? Today, a typical Apple app, I'm not sure about Android, probably the same, but of course they were the pioneers. If you let an engineer design it, how the apps will probably look like it's a square.
Right.
Yep. So but what Apple did is that they put curves at the side, right? Like you see here. So I say this because YouTube, as you know, recently did the exact same thing. So Google, the phrase in Google is that it's for nerds, because Google has a very strong engineering.
Correct.
And so if you look at like YouTube, right, they were mainly square. The subscribe button was very square, rectangle, right? Sharp edges. Today they finally caught up. And today the subscribe button is a circle. You have nice curves. Right? So anyway, the point is, I think you want to get into creative industries because then you are like unique. Then you like can do many, many different things. Yep. And you can bring many things to the table.
Right. Actually, to top it off is actually in the next slide. So we're actually going to discuss about how you can actually stay competitive or stay relevant in your workforce.
Yeah.
Okay, so number one is that people always add value.
Yeah.
But we don't know what is the meaning. Maybe some of you guys don't know what's the meaning of add value. The most obvious answer to this is actually very simple. Number one is sales.
Yeah.
So if you want to add value to the company, how can you improve sales for the particular company?
It doesn't matter what, it really doesn't matter how technology evolves or that. Sales is eternal.
Yes, correct. Sales is always king. Yeah, that's number one thing that a company, or let's say you are a business owner, you also need to think about is how to improve sales. Number two is cost is key, but there's actually a catch to this, because if you are not someone who can keep up with the trend, technological changes, and also to provide efficiency in their operation, you will still be replaced.
Yeah.
I mean, if the only thing that I will see that is less likely to be replaced, maybe is the marketers. If let's say they are very at the top tier of their job. So for example, you hire Peng Jun. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
are you going to replace Peng Chu with another marketer? Probably not. But if let's say he start to complacent, then yes, then maybe you start.
I think if you're an individual and you want to add value, actually, like always ask yourself whether you can contribute in these 2 or 3 ways. Okay, so let's use our investing knowledge here a bit. So we know that companies that are good can be profitable over time, over the long run, right? So what affects profit, we know, is sales and costs.
Yeah.
Right. So your job, if you want to add value, is very simple. When you go to your employer, right? Or even if you are creating products. Let's do employer first. Let's say you're going to employer, I want to work for you. The thing you cannot be asking is, how much holiday am I going to get? How much I'm going to get paid?
Yeah.
Do I get this benefit? No. You can ask that later on. But the first thing you want to ask is yourself is how you can improve the guy's sales or reduce the guy's costs. So improve the guy's sales would be, either you are a marketer, like say, I can increase your awareness or whatever lah.
Yeah, or you're just a very good salesperson.
Right, or a very good salesperson, or even like I can manage your team very well, whatever lah, right? So of course you need to back that up if you can. Then the cost part, right, is not just like you can save the guy money. Yes, of course, that's the most immediate one. So for example, one thing that I did when I offered to work for my first company is like no salary. So the boss is really getting a benefit in terms of what I'm going to produce. Even if I produce average work, right? But I'm paid below market.
Yeah.
So below market rates for average work is fantastic, right? So of course, you don't want to just do average work.
Correct.
But you want to, you
want to show results. You want to show something to them first so that you can prove.
But the part about cost is not just like, I can do things cheaper for you. That's always great. Every employer will want that. But also saving time or saving headache. Like you pay me, maybe you pay me more than the typical, let's say, operations guy or whatever. But if you pay me more, I can get your product out in like 60% of the time that you're currently doing. Or I can manage this team for you so you can go on and focus and do other things. So that is also a way of like value adding, I would say.
Yep.
So again, very simple, right? How can you contribute to the company's sales and how can you contribute to the company's
low costs? Yeah.
If you have the ability to do one or the other or both, you are very unsackable. Let me put it that way.
Okay. So this one is actually a pretty interesting another way of thinking, right? It's instead of asking for salary, maybe you want to get them to ask whether you can get paid with equity stake. Now, this is a very rare question. I believe not many will actually ask this. Like, who will go to an interview and say, people will be expecting how much is my salary. You wouldn't say like, how much am I getting out of your company? Like, how many percent of the cake am I getting? Yeah, but it shows like a different kind of mindset. Yeah. If an employee actually approach to this kind of way, because you are genuinely wanting to help the company.
Yes.
Yeah. If you have a stake, you definitely have the drive to grow the company even more, so that you will be worth more lah. There's a very classic example. I believe is Shamath. Yes, correct. So back then he actually worked for Facebook. I believe when he negotiated with his employer, he wanted a cut of that company. So if you don't know what that company is, he actually worked for Facebook. Yeah. When it's actually before IPO, before they even go public. Yeah. So that, he sees that there's what's the company's worth, and the risk he actually, whatever risk that he take, actually managed to pay it off. He's now a billionaire. Yeah. Because of his stake. Yeah.
Yes. So actually, building on that, there's this guy called David Cho. So he's even crazier. When Facebook was starting out, I think he was doing some interior design for Facebook or something like that. And then what he did was he like Facebook couldn't pay him or something like that. Then he was like, you just give me like $60,000 worth of Facebook stock.
Wow. That was back
This was
back
like
in?
right at the beginning.
Oh, my.
Right at the beginning. So he was like, he was just, I don't know whether it's interior designing lah. Yeah.
But it's the same story as Shamath lah. Yeah.
No, but he's even crazier because Chamat actually worked there.
Yeah.
He was just a guy like, I don't know, doing painting for them. You can't pay me. Yeah, you can be your Facebook chats, whatever lah. You know?
Yeah. It's like the Bitcoin story, getting paid. I mean, the pizza delivery guy getting paid with Bitcoin. Yeah.
So, this kind of stories, I think, but yeah, you're right in general, do consider equity stake, but you also have to be aware and you have to see whether your company, actually wants to go listing lah.
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
You
that's
have to
why
assume
yeah. You need to be smart. I mean, you have to do that's why you have to do research before you actually even go interview, right? So that's the key thing you need to know. And the last thing is that if you want to really, improve your income, right? One thing is definitely you have to do for freelancer. You have to find for side hustle or maybe even start your own business. Because when you start your own business, that's where you know the pain, and also you start to be more driven to think about sales, think about how to improve your costs and whatsoever.
And it's no different from like what I said just now about employers.
Yes.
The way to think about it, if anyone's starting a business, one thing that how I would approach it is that the same way as the employer. Think of customers as your employer or clients or whatnot. Again, back to the sales and costing. Will your product help them make more money? That's one. But typically, most businesses will help them in the cost department. It will help
reduce time for them to actually...
Whether it's reducing time or whether it's saving them money or whether it's reducing a headache. So, same concept.
Yep, agree. Okay, so the final takeaway that we're trying to push out this message is that are you actually an asset or a liability to your company? So that is something that you need to think about. And if you manage to scratch your head and think about all of this stuff, I'm pretty sure that you are in a safe spot to stay relevant in the workforce and even succeed in a way. So I think that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy this type of mini podcast.
Yes.
If you
we'll be uploading on Spotify as well.
Yes, correct.
So you can listen there.
Yeah, and if you guys love this kind of structure, do let us know in the comments. We read all of your comments. So if you love it, we'll do more of it. And find us out in our Instagram, Facebook, follow us, all of our socials, all there. Links are all in the description. And we'll see you in the next video.
All right, see you guys.